Time for a quick break to talk about some delicious breakfast options at McDonald's, like a steak, egg, and cheese bagel. Or you can get steak on a McMuffin or biscuit or any other of your favorite breakfast sandwiches. And for even more deliciousness, pair it with a caramel macchiato or one of our other McCafe beverages to make sure your day gets off to a great start. At participating McDonald's, single item at regular price.
New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DEFEND to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on anything. That's code DEFEND. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over and physically present in Ohio. Valid one offer per first-time depositors who have not already redeemed $200 in free bets via pre-launch offer. Minimum $5 deposit and wager. $200 issued as bonus bets. Eligibility restrictions apply. See dkng.co/OH for terms.
It didn't listen to me. It walked out of the thicket. It turned around and looked at me.
They looked up, and in this tree, there was a monkey man. And the monkey man jumped down out of the tree and started running away.
And suddenly, they're right in front of the car. He slams on the brakes and manages to stop, and he's skidding because it's like quite, gravelly. And literally for about a second and a half, they just stood there because they don't know where to go, and you tell them panicking. They're like really flapping, and their face is like twitching.
Welcome back to Bigfoot Society, a podcast where we focus on cryptids, the strange, and the unexplained of this world. If you've got a story or something weird to share, send an email over to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support this show, head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now, on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the pleasure of chatting with a good friend, Mr. Nick Valenzuela. How's it going, Nick?
What's up, Jeremiah? I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, dude, I've been looking forward to this chat for a while. I enjoy listening, or I shouldn't say listening, reading in Paranormality Magazine. You have some really cool articles that come out, and we're going to talk about that later. But you're let's talk to the listeners a little bit about what it is you've got going on. So you're writing stuff for Paranormality Magazine. You're into Fortean stuff, high strangeness, cryptozoology. You're all over the place. You were in a show about Champ. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But what other good stuff does our audience need to know so they can get up to speed about what you got going on, Nick?
Yeah, thank you for the kind words there. That covers a good chunk of it. I kind of jumped into the world of the weird with something called California Creepypasta, which I started. It started just sort of as an Instagram, and then it became a website, and just kind of grew from there, where it was this idea of just kind of getting out on the road out here in California, where I'm from, and just sort of exploring digital urban legends that kind of popped up on the internet, the Crybaby Bridge type of stuff, where it's like, hey, apparently people say that if you show up to this place, this certain thing happens. And I kind of thought it'd be cool to just grab a camera, jump out there, and see if there was anything to the stories, and just kind of take people to the actual places and give them sort of a boots on the ground style look at where some of the most infamous legends in California started. And then the rest is history. I just sort of, was able to get some cool opportunities from that. And now I'm, a full 100% guy that looks into weird stuff. So it's been fun.
That's awesome. Man, so that's already a little bit more that I didn't know about you, which is awesome. I love that. And you've been involved with some of the clubhouse rooms way back, and always enjoyable when you're in there. I always like listening to those. But that's really interesting about California Creepypasta. That's a part I didn't know, that you're focused on the digital legends, the newer legends. What's the cutoff for something to be considered a digital legend time
Well,
wise?
I also jumped into like classic legends too. The idea sort of spun from those like digital urban legends that kind of started. That's sort of where the creepypasta name came from.
Sure.
Creepypasta is sort of a portmanteau, if you're familiar with the term, where it's an amalgamation of two words. There used to be copy paste or copy pasta back in the day, where basically there were these stories that would pop up on the internet without a source, and they would just kind of get copy and pasted around and passed around. And that really kind of exploded in sort of the, the horror community and kind of the paranormal community, where they would just write these like stories and kind of pass them around, and they became these digital urban legends. And I kind of thought it'd be cool to explore some of that out here in California.
Okay.
So California creepypasta kind of just rolled off the tongue. But then, I also had 100% love for the classic stuff, Patterson Gimlin film, the Whaley House, the Winchester Mystery House. We got a lot of the heavy hitters out here. So I wanted to include everything that I could. And I just thought like, it would take a really long time to run out of content if I just kept, going, because California is huge. As I have put the miles on my car, I've gone up and down the state, and there's a legend basically in every little crevice of every little town. And it's a really cool place. I mean, it's not a place a lot of people associate with, having at the forefront of your mind with a spooky place. It's kind of like the place
right.
With stars and sunshine and Silicon Valley and all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot out here, and it's been a passion project that has given me some really amazing opportunities that I really didn't think anything would come of it. I was shocked that really anybody even paid any attention to what I was doing, but it's been really, really fun.
That is awesome that it all started with it just being a passion project on social media, and then it morphed into a website, and then somewhere along the way you got hooked up with Paranormality Magazine, started writing for them. Somewhere along the way you got yourself into the TV show Looking for Champ. Like that's a really cool adventure. It kind of, I would say good advice from that I take is be careful, kids, what you put on the internet, because you never know what is watching or who is watching. I guess what is watching too in some cases, but
that is true. Actually, I have learned that also.
Oh, really? Oh my goodness.
No, 100% accurate with that. You never know who's going to stumble across your stuff, and for good or bad, right? It's out there for everybody to see, and very luckily on my part, it's been 100% positive.
So let's go over a few of the things that you have investigated. What have been some of your top things that you've investigated over the years with California creepypasta?
We'll probably get definitely more in depth into this later, but for sure the number one thing I think that I kind of explored with California creepypasta and what kind of blossomed was the Fresno Nightcrawler story.
Definitely.
I feel, and I say this not to sound pretentious or up in my own way of anything, but I feel like it may be the singular story that I've done that was able to uncover more new information and more information that was previously out there. So it felt like real journalistic, investigating, and I loved every single step of that. It was multi-layered and multiple parted, where I initially just kind of found the house. I was able to get in contact with the family. I was able to explore the story a little bit more, but to me, that was it was just kind of a dream come true to really kind of have maybe one of the more infamous cryptids sort of be something that I was able to explore to a degree that hadn't really been done yet. Other things that I've really enjoyed with California creepypasta have been some kind of like nuanced things. Like I got to kayak all of Lake Tahoe and look for Tahoe Tessie.
Oh, really?
The lake monster, and that kind of led to me looking into Champ on TV later on. That's kind of where that initially stemmed from. And just kind of getting to check out some places that are normally kind of off limits to certain people at certain times. I was able to do some cool stuff at the Whaley House, the Winchester Mystery House, and just like some of those classic haunted house places. And yeah, the California creepypasta has afforded me those opportunities, whereas flashback 10 years ago, I would have just been a random person asking for permission to do things and probably told no.
So I'm very interested in that little talk we had there, because I personally want to know. So those are I know Winchester Mystery House is like a very kind of spooky place in California you could go to, but you're saying like you dropped, hey, I'm with California creepypasta. Like, how did that conversation go that you were able to get into places that, normal Joe off the street wouldn't have been able to do? Like, how did that all go down? I'm curious.
I mean, it honestly, the best advice I could probably give to anybody that's trying to do anything remotely like this is really just ask. I can't really say there's a secret sauce or anything special to it other than reaching out to whoever is in control of marketing or media with whatever place you're trying to get to, and just shooting them an email and just saying, hey, this is me, link your stuff. Yeah, I think at first you sort of have to maybe build some stuff to look at.
Sure. Yeah.
So
that makes sense. Yeah.
So people can do it. And the best way to do that is just get out there and do it. Make stuff from scratch. That's really what I did. And then, if you come off professional enough, I suppose, I can't claim that I feel 100% professional all the time, but if you, I think you also have to sort of present, you're not doing anything to cause any damage to any property, or you're not looking to, do anything chaotic or insane. You might be granted or afforded some opportunities to look into some stuff. I've also been turned down a whole bunch of times, different things. So, you just kind of have to ask. And a lot of times, you might be surprised what some of the answers you get back are. I'm sure you've also experienced this as well with getting interviews. I got to interview Lauren Coleman, which is something that
I'm extremely happy for you that you were able to get that privilege. That's one way I'm going to say that, because how have I tried many times, but like it's an amazing interview too. Like I built, that was in the magazine, right? It
was in the magazine.
Yeah. I had a little brain thing there for a second, but I was like, I read that. It was good too. Like, hats off to you, man. It's a good interview. Thank you.
It was, I think Lauren is, he's somebody that, takes his time very seriously, as he should. So he's, the only way I was able to interview him was at 6 a.m. I'm out on the West Coast. He's in Maine on the East Coast.
Right.
I interviewed him at 6 a.m. in the morning. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And it was very last second. Literally, like, he called me on the phone unexpectedly.
Oh wow!
I woke up and looked at my phone, and saw a Maine area code. And luckily, even in my grogginess and in my sleep state, I recognized, oh my gosh, I think this is Lauren Coleman.
You're like, oh, so 207.
I chugged some water to get that like morning voice out, and kind of coughed a couple of times, and and picked up the phone and had to do the interview like right there on the spot. And I had to scramble for my notes. But it was
so good.
Yeah, it was a dream come true. And he, obviously the man's a wealth of knowledge and huge dream come true for sure. It was cool. And just getting to like, ask him questions was at times I had to like refocus because you're just sort of like fanboying, like, oh
yeah,
wow.
Exactly. No, I totally get that. I mean, I think those sometimes are the best interviews because it's like you almost, it's like you get slapped in the back of your head, you caught off guard and you're like, and then it's like that's the best stuff sometimes is when you're like not in your zone, right? You just like, Hopefully you've done a little bit of prep beforehand, but like with the, I do open phone lines for Bigfoot Society. And sometimes I get people call in. I'm like, oh, I wish I could have prepared for you, but like, this is really cool that I'm talking to you, but, let's talk. So the haunted houses, or the spooky houses, did anything cool come out of that? Any, interesting stuff or what did you find in there?
I think the most interesting thing that I ever captured wasn't at one of the haunted houses. And I know this is on my Instagram for sure. I was at a place called Devil's Gate Dam. Ironically enough, I was talking to Lauren Coleman. It was about the whole devil names and
totally
weirdness associated with that phenomenon. And so I was at a place called Devil's Gate Dam in Pasadena, which was famous for a lot of weird stuff Jack Parsons did way back in the day. He was
Ruh-roh.
Yeah. There's this giant like rock outcrop that looks like the stereotypical head of the devil out there, and it's really bizarre.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like
wow.
No kidding. It's there's pictures of it on my Instagram. It's creepy. It's definitely a creepy place. That whole Arroyo they call it the Arroyo Seco Triangle, where it's like the Suicide Bridge is out there, and then there's like the Cobb Estate, which is like this ruined grounds of this mansion. All creepy stuff. Pasadena is a weird area too, obviously with the Parsons connections. But I was exploring that cave or that dam, and there's kind of like a flood entry area where you can go into sort of the right underneath the Devil's Head. And I was in there. This is like at 3 a.m. in the morning. I was totally alone. I was trying to.
Why? You're a younger guy though, right? Like, yeah,
I'm in my 30s.
Oh man, hats off to you. Okay, go for it, dude. That's great, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta kind of
do it. Yeah, I love it.
And I was checking it out, and I caught a super audible laugh that's on there. It's super clear to hear. I didn't hear it with my own ears. You can see me in the video, like adjusting my camera. I could shoot you a DM of that if you want to like check that out too. It's very audible. It's very clear.
Wow.
And at the time, I wasn't aware of this. The legends associated with that particular part of the dam, the indigenous people of the area would say that the coyote spirit was in there, and it would laugh constantly. They would hear laughing coming out of it. So that's exactly what I caught. And then Parsons and all that connection with the trickster god and all that kind of stuff. It all kind of like culminated. It was very odd. And one other part to that story that's not really out there. I think I've told the story a couple times. But at one point when I was in the dam, I thought I saw for a split second. It's the only time I could ever really say anything like this happened to me. I thought I saw somebody in like a white robe kind of thing. It was for a split second. It almost felt like it was in my mind's eye, but I never said that. I never said that to a soul. I thought that I was like, I think I'm just kind of freaking myself out. So I have a friend who she claims to have some like psychic medium abilities. I showed her the video, just kind of, being a little cheeky and fun. And she turned to me and she said, "You know that there's a person standing behind you?" And I said, "Really?" And she says, "Yes, they're in a white robe, and they're sort of like half phasing in and out. There's
Like
only like
Back to the Future, dude.
yeah." And she claimed that like she could see like a diagonal portion of them. And I never told anybody. That's exactly what I saw. So I was like, "Whoa!" So I don't think I was alone in that cave. So I think, as far as evidence goes, of me making any of these little videos or taking pictures, I think that one definitely takes the cake. Yeah,
Nick, that is wild, man. I don't know how I would handle that, man. Like, it would take a few days of decompressing after that and being like, I don't know, man.
Yeah. It was quite a thing to do for sure. But I'll have to shoot you the raw footage.
Oh, dude, that would be awesome. Yeah, thank you. Just something that came to mind when I think of like digital legends, and I don't even know if this one is associated with California, so it might just be a shot in the dark. But have you ever looked into like the Rake at all?
Oh man, Jeremiah, that is funny.
No,
you say that.
Because I am right now.
The Rake is probably like the number one thing I'm focused on in my life right now.
Really?
Yeah,
dude.
Yeah.
Synchronicity hellier stuff we just had to happen right there, man.
It's so funny you even said that too, because
no.
I mean, that's my life basically right now. It's funny, the Hellier stuff. I know they get a lot of heat for all the synchronicity stuff, but my goodness.
And I mean that in all good jest, right?
Sure.
Yeah, they're great.
When you really start looking into this stuff like that, you get the synchronicity, like
totally, dude.
Upheaval for sure. Because with Paranormality, we are working on a documentary feature. Like, it's in the very early stages, but a huge portion of it is about the Rake. And there's so much stuff to the Rake that I have learned and uncovered. And it's a huge part of my life right now. So yes,
dude, I think that's breaking news, dude.
I think it is. I don't think we've talked about that. Yeah, publicly. But no, it's
no one listens to this. Don't worry.
The project is kind of my baby too, so I think I'm at liberty to definitely like give some hints about it and talk about it. That's also I've kind of dropped off on like Instagram and
sure.
And was posting lately. I'm trying my best to get back to it, but a huge portion of that is dealing with this project, just getting something like this off the ground. The scale of what it's going to be is almost like a full-time job. So it's wow, it's crazy that you brought that up. Yeah.
I'm gonna make a weird cut point segue just in case I have to cut that out. You let me know later. No, so hey, yeah, we're talking about California legends in the Rake, and so I'm just you mentioned that earlier that you've been investigating that. Can you share anything that you found so far, or are you kind of keeping it under wraps for the future?
I could definitely share. So there's actually an existing article right now in Paranormality Magazine where I interviewed Lon Strickler, who he released a book, I want to say 2021, called The Moon Humanoids. And it kind of deals with the idea of the Rake and the Pale Crawler, and where that kind of that cross idea kind of comes from. And it explores the ideas of egregores and tulpas and mimetic viruses kind of jumping into the world in a living way. So what I kind of uncovered in the article is there's sort of I kind of make the argument that there's a Rake triangle out in California that kind of starts from outside the Sacramento area, and it kind of jumps into the Sierra Nevada mountain range. Then down toward Fresno, Yosemite. And like, kind of ironically, I know we love triangles, right? But it kind of does form the shape of a triangle if you look at it. And there's been a lot of reports of kind of like classic rake looking creatures outside of Sacramento, in the Antelope area. And there's a small town called Loomis where they've seen them. Lon actually has posted some stuff on his Phantom and Monsters website regarding those stories. And they're just these classic rake looking creatures. And then if you jump to the Sierra Nevada mountain range, you go a little bit northeast in California, there's the legend of this really creepy rake-like entity called Penelope. The name doesn't really fit.
Oh no.
But yeah, it's near the like Mono Lake area, and it's it's a very creepy pasta backstory about like a scorned woman who sort of has devolved into this creature. There's a million different versions of the legend, but basically, yeah, it's this carnivorous rake-like entity now that kind of roams that area. And then you go down to Yosemite, Fresno, you get kind of an offshoot version of the rake in the Nightcrawlers outside of Yosemite and then in Fresno. So yeah, the rake is it's an interesting thing, right? You can trace it back, just like Slender Man. You can trace it back to having these creepypasta roots, but now people are reporting actual sightings, and some of the stuff really kind of ties into the old legend of the ghoul. But there's definitely some more stuff that I've uncovered that is even weirder than that will definitely.
Wow, I'm looking forward to that, man. So the idea behind it is that the thought, so we may have to, there may be a few people that don't know what we're talking about, and they're imagining a guy holding a plastic rake and like, what's so scary about that? So let's start where it's like, what's your summary description of what we're dealing with when you say the rake?
So the rake is basically, if anyone has ever seen the movie The Descent, I believe is what it's called.
Movie, yeah.
It's pretty much a carbon copy of what those creatures were in that movie. It's these very gangly, pale-looking, humanoid, almost vampiric-like entities, creatures. They're sort of an offshoot of they almost look like a version of Count Orlok or Nosferatu, right? From that old movie.
Uh-huh.
What was that monster on the X-Files that would like crawl in the sewers? I think it was it almost looks like that too.
I think of it as like a really, really bad attitude Gollum, but like way worse.
Right. That's another excellent way to describe it. Very, very similar in that way. So basically, and they're seen as often crawling on all fours. That's why they've sort of been given the name also as pale crawlers, just very gaunt, gangly, crawling entities. They've been seen that there's an uptick definitely in sightings of these things. And, the argument is this something that's been here for a really long time and is, just accidentally tied into this creepypasta that was created? Or how much do you give stock in the idea that believing in something, enough people believing in something, can potentially manifest, an entity? Or there's sort of the third idea of all paranormal stuff is sort of its own sort of consciousness and its own sort of idea, and it just presents itself in whatever mask or whatever thing it thinks is going to scare you the most, and presents itself in either these now real world fictional ideas. So there's a lot of places you could run with that idea, but there is something to these stories that are popping up more and more.
It's weird, dude. It's so weird. And I think the weirdest part, just because I've been there, is that you keep bringing up the Yosemite area. Mm-hmm. And like, I've been to Yosemite back about 7-8 years ago. And I'll tell you, man, when you're driving out there, like, for one, you lose cell reception an hour outside the park at least. And then like, there's some parts and like, you get some weird vibes in there, dude. And this is before I was into like Bigfoot stuff. I was just getting weird vibes in there. But You know, man, oh, that's going to be such a good doc when it comes out. I'm excited for the future when you guys get into that. I mean, just by we can talk about another thing that you've investigated is the Fresno Nightcrawlers, which like right now, man, for some reason, like people love the Fresno Nightcrawlers, like they just love it, but it's not really that old a cryptid, right?
Yeah, 2007 is when
Holy mackerel.
Yeah, so we're actually, as of our time recording this, we're about a week away from the 15-year anniversary of the video being recorded. I believe it was November 5th, 2007. So, yeah, it's only 15 years. I couldn't even get a drink right now if it wanted to.
That's so wild, and it's like a lot of people, think of it as like, oh, it's such a funny cryptid. It's like, something walking around with big white pants on, ha 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 ha.
Mhm.
But the crazy thing is like, the articles you've written for Paranormality, like you really, really dug deep into this story and found out some cool stuff. Do you mind sharing about like, it's something where, you were like, I'm just going to start looking into the Nightcrawlers, or like, how did that come about for you to get into it?
For sure, yeah, it is. It's probably right now like my pride and joy of stories. Yeah, just it kind of came to me where originally in the idea of California creepypasta, I was trying to get to all these locations, and I was trying to find like this is where this happened, or this is where this happened, and so obviously, being out in California, that's a very notable California story. I just looked into, okay, where did this take place? And I couldn't find the information anywhere. It wasn't really available online. So it was sort of a mystery. So that's kind of where it started for me, was finding the actual location of the house. Once I did that, I had kind of posted that and was like, cool. But it kept nagging at me over time, where I wanted to really kind of speak to the family. I was like, well, I know where the house is. Can I make a connection with the family? Can I ask some questions that maybe haven't been answered? And I wanted to just really kind of do this deep dive investigation into everybody that was involved at the time with the story. So a little bit of background, a little bit of context on the story. It happened on November 5th, I believe, 2007. The man who recorded the footage, his name was Jose. There were break-ins and they were stealing bikes, I believe, in the neighborhood. So he set up a CCTV camera in the front part of his house. And, I'm just trying to kind of make sure nobody's stealing his bike or, going on his property. The way he told the story was that they started to hear the dogs barking in the neighborhood, like going insane. And he looked at his monitor and saw what we all now know and love, the Fresno Nightcrawlers. These two little pant-looking cryptids that walk across his lawn.
New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DEFEND to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on anything. That's code DEFEND. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 and over and physically present in Ohio. Valid one offer per first-time depositors who have not already redeemed $200 in free bets via pre-launch offer. Minimum $5 deposit and wager. $200 issued as bonus bets. Eligibility restrictions apply. See dkng.co/OH for terms.
By now, you know that sound. It's the sound of the Home Depot. But what about that sound? You're listening to a set of GE appliances, complete with all you need to keep food fresh, dishes clean, and everything else stress-free. Making this the sound of savings on top brand appliances. The Home Depot. How doers get more done. Get up to 25% off select GE appliances right now. Offer valid January 5th through January 25th, 2023. U.S. only. See store or online for details.
And the rest is history. The footage got to Univision and aired on TV, and then Univision got in contact with a MUFON investigator named Victor Camacho. and they brought him out to initially examine the footage. He actually didn't initially get to go to the house, but then he eventually did make some. He was invited over by the family, and he did his investigation, and it kind of just wrapped up from there. And shortly after, a few years later, I should say, word had kind of gotten out that Jose, the man who had recorded the footage, had passed away. And that is kind of where the story died. That's kind of where, it was just left, and the Nightcrawlers were left to kind of live in infamy. And, now they're all over Etsy, and everybody's
they are.
and everybody's drawing them, and they're kind of the cute cryptid, right?
Yeah.
Every time I think I bring up the Nightcrawlers, even to people who aren't necessarily interested in the scarier aspects of this whole world, they love the Nightcrawlers. They think they're these really adorable things. So the thing that kept sticking out to me that I could never really 100% shake is whenever I saw any sort of footage or got any sort of ability to kind of see where Jose's mindset was at the time, he was deathly afraid of these things. And to me, that kind of didn't really make sense. It was like the rest of the world has this very, very loving and like they think these things are the cutest thing ever. They have this very like loving reaction to these things. And the guy that experienced them was very adamant that he was terrified of what was going on. So that to me just kept ringing some alarm bells. Like there's something else going on here that I don't know has ever been kind of pressed upon. So I was able to finally get in contact with the family. I was able to go to the Nightcrawler house and interview the family and talk to them about everything that went on. I was able to interview Victor Camacho, who was the initial investigator there. And I was able to kind of get a bunch of information that wasn't really out there, and
I love it.
Change the story completely around as far as I'm concerned. So I'll kind of start with, they, after the Nightcrawler incident had happened, they essentially started to see what the family described as ghost children.
Ooh.
Just kind of popping in and out of their house. They would see them, walking across their kitchen, like the mother of the family saw a baby crawl across their kitchen floor. Jose and his brother both witnessed a child just sort of manifest in their closet. But the one glaring detail that they described to me about all these kids that they were seeing, which instantly sort of caught my attention, was that every time they saw these kids, they had solid black eyes.
Oh, man. You're going there, Nick. Come on.
Yep.
Come on, Nick. Don't put that on my podcast. I'm just kidding.
No, so if anybody's familiar with the Black-Eyed Kids lore and legend, Black-Eyed Children, David Weatherly has written extensively about them.
Yep.
These are these kids that show up at your property and they demand to, some sort of, to be let in. They're asking for some sort of permission or entry to be allowed into your house or what have you. And, they're kind of looked at as these paranormal parasites that feed off of fear. They create these, they're kids, but everybody that encounters them claims that they had this insane, immense amount of fear and they were terrified. And so now I'm being told this by the family, and I'm starting to understand. And then, with the context of Jose, the original man who took the footage, his sense of dread and fear, the story was starting to kind of change for me a little bit, to where now this made a little bit more sense. And essentially they informed me at one point that they told the kids, like, you can stay here. You can.
Oh no.
Yeah. You can, stay at our house. It's fine. We give you permission to stay. they never told me that was something the kids ever outwardly asked for, but they had this sense that they didn't want to mess with them, so they thought giving them permission and access was fine. So the story of the Nightcrawlers kind of is a disguise for a black-eyed kid story in a way.
Oh, man.
And this is somewhat of a controversial statement, I suppose, but Jose did pass away shortly thereafter, and it's sort of one of those things where it was questionable. It's like, what was going on here? And the family informed me that basically after he had passed, their sightings of the kids happened less frequently. They would still see them, but it was a lot less frequent. So it was like, did they get what they were looking for? Victor Camacho, who initially examined the Nightcrawlers footage, the initial footage, claims that at a couple different frames, you can see when one of the Nightcrawlers walks across the lawn, it looks up and its eyes are solid black. I believe there's a video on YouTube where somebody color grades out all the light or whatever, and it's very obvious that the Nightcrawlers have two solid black eyes. So in the article, I somewhat make this argument that were the Nightcrawlers just perhaps some kind of putty, and early version of what eventually was seen. So it's a very curious story. It's quite interesting. One other really, really, really random but interesting thing that kind of spun off of that is, as we were talking kind of earlier about Hellier and how the phenomenon somewhat kind of winks at you, or the synchronicities. Prior to the Nightcrawler story, the story I had written for the magazine was on the devil's names and those places. And I went to a place called Devil's Den in Arkansas, which is a spot where a man wrote 2 books called Incident at Devil's Den. His name is Terry Lovelace, and he talks about this abduction experience that he had at Devil's Den. And he told me this entire story about, as he was a child, he would see these like monkey men come into his room, and prior to like any sort of abduction experiences. And one thing he informed me was a really odd detail about the monkey men were that they look like little circus monkeys, but it looked like they were wearing paper plates with cutout eyes over their faces.
What?
Super weird detail, right? So I take note of that. And that's in the article. Fast forward to the, a month later or whatever, when I'm doing the Fresno Nightcrawlers article, Rogelio, who is the brother of Jose, Rogelio is still alive at the house, informed me that when he saw the black-eyed kid in Jose's closet, he said it looked like he was wearing a paper plate over his face, and he could just see the black eyes. And it was such a bizarre to have something so random like that come up twice. Felt like the phenomenon in a way, or whatever was winking at me. Like I mean, big time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
So strange. So after that, I really got into kind of the whole like faceless beings and looking into that kind of stuff, and trying to find anything and everything I could. And surprisingly, I was able to find a couple of different stories out there of beings that appear to almost have faceless features. I asked around a lot. I didn't get a lot of feedback on that. The only person who really kind of sent me some interesting stuff, and she's amazing, is her name's Zelia Edgar.
Oh, totally. Yeah. From Midwest. Yeah. She comes out to the, she was 2 years ago. She's at the Van Meter Visitor Festival. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. She definitely, she pointed me in some direction. It was awesome. Just, it was like, okay, somebody knows about this, or have encountered such a niche, weird detail in all these things, but it was so creepy. You know, it paints a picture of maybe something weirder, larger going on here, but that Nightcrawler story definitely had a lot more twists and turns than I was initially expecting. I even point out in the article, which is a little extreme. I think so. I've gotten some interesting comments on it, but I even make the argument that the Nightcrawlers, just in general, are somewhat of a triangular shape. So one detail about the video is prior to seeing the Nightcrawlers, you can arguably say there's a flash of light, and then the Nightcrawlers sort of just walk across the lawn. I asked the family, did they have a floodlight at the time? They couldn't recall. But there does seem to be like a flash of light, and then the Nightcrawlers pop out. So one thing that I sort of point out in the article is in like Goetian summoning rituals, the triangle is very important. Some people argue that with like black triangle UFOs and summoning creatures and summoning things.
Oh, man.
So I don't know. There might have been something really dark or really weird going on with the Nightcrawler story, and it's not as cute anymore in that way. But
I think we're way past the point where those guys are not cute anymore. Like, if there's like, you know, black-eyed kids involved, like, how cute can the Nightcrawlers be? Like,
I'm definitely not one of those people that tries to paint everything in the paranormal being evil or scary or but I mean, all the signs
facts are facts, dude.
Yeah, all the signs in the story kind of seem to point to something somewhat malevolent, or at least you know, looking to take something from somebody, and that's kind of where the story is for me. It's definitely an interesting case. I think way more interesting than maybe just a couple of funny looking pant creatures walking across the lawn.
yeah, totally. Or like, I feel terrible because I don't know the artist's name, but like, there's these stickers on Etsy where it's like, have you seen the cat cryptids? Where it's like this white cat that's like supposed to be the Fresno Nightcrawlers, is just wearing these high water white pants.
I think I have seen
it. It's so funny. How does Yosemite play into the Nightcrawlers? Because I know it's connected somehow, right?
It is. So shortly after the Nightcrawlers video, I want to say it was 2 or 3 years later, another video kind of surfaced online that was supposedly right outside of Yosemite National Park. Okay. And it was these much longer night version of a Nightcrawler. They had this really funny gait and stride, but it's kind of the only other video at the time that was out there that looked similar. Yosemite's not terribly far from Fresno. They're kind of within a reasonable distance of each other. So it sort of also became part of the, you know, the lore in that area that, okay, there's something going on here. You had mentioned earlier about going to Yosemite and you know, feeling some funny vibes.
Totally.
I know everybody has their different opinions on kind of the missing 411 stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is the biggest cluster area that Paulides has out there is Yosemite National Park.
Oh, is it really?
It is.
Okay.
And we were talking about the Rake and the Nightcrawlers kind of almost being this offshoot of the Rake. The Miwok people of the area, I believe they had a legend around Bridal Veil Falls, which is this really famous waterfall out there that kind of had these like ghoulish Rake-like creatures that were around that area. So there's sort of a precedent there for kind of these weird humanoid being creatures that somewhat stalked the area, and the lore is that they were carnivorous and you know, were dangerous. So there's potentially something just weird in that area, or there's some kind of lore or legend that maybe manifests from time to time, or just something odd going on for sure. I mean, Yosemite is a whole other can of worms, but
yeah,
these humanoid creatures,
So I'm curious that the legend you mentioned about the Bridal Veil Falls. So is that something that you've actually seen in print, or is that also like, something that you're able to track down on the internet, or like what's a source for that? Just curious.
A couple of different sources. The one that sticks out to me the most is I believe the book's called Veiled Destinies by Walter Bosley. Where I believe it's I sound like a nerd, but I believe it's chapter 8.
Hey, it's awesome. You know it. Yeah.
He opens up the chapter with an examination of Yosemite, some of the lore and legends, and how that ties into the missing 411 stuff. And I believe that's like the main source where he points out.
Okay.
And this guy's a former FBI agent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he's not just kind of writing books and doesn't really have a pedigreed background. This is the guy that knows his stuff. So
gotcha. Is it a newer book or?
I believe it is. I believe it's probably a year old.
Okay. Interesting.
I probably have it somewhere lying around my room here, but yeah. It's Secret Missions, Veiled Destinies, or something like that. But Walter Bosley, if you Google Walter Bosley books, I'm sure it'll come up. He's done a lot of interesting research into kind of occult mysteries in California. So he's
interesting.
Cool guy.
The thing I love about what you're doing, and just kind of had this like thought in my head a few minutes ago, is that we live in a time where on YouTube there's Joe whoever's faces, and he's got this channel where he's like, I'm gonna read you some mysteries, kids, and they're gonna be creepy, and I hope you don't get scared. Cha-ching. And then it's like, but you are actually taking the time to do the research and not just be like, I'm gonna throw up and I'm sure people get ripped at me saying stuff like that, but it's like come on, like let's actually take the time to do the investigation about these stories, and we're not just like putting up videos for views and stuff. So hats off to you. Sure. It's very cool what you're doing.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I always do really try to find the sources or find evidence that kind of matches together for any of this stuff. I mean, it's a crazy topic for sure. It's really hard to nail this stuff down. I mean, if it was, then we you'd probably be interviewing Bigfoot at some point, right? So,
heck yes, yeah, he's on the list, dude.
So it's tough, but whenever possible, I always try to like have those sources down, and I always do my best to try to remember, as I said, chapter 8,
Right, exactly. Which a lot of people can't do. What was it like? What was it like getting to go out to New England to look for Champ? How was that? That was, kind of out of the California area. So
definitely. I had never been to Vermont. That was my first time out there. It was a dream come true. That was honestly just an amazing experience. Beautiful area. Lake Champlain is a beautiful lake, but having the opportunity to go out there to do a cryptozoological investigation was just icing on the cake. And, being able to do it in a way where it was going to be something that was presented to, a mass audience in a way was a dream come true. And it felt like we were doing something really fun and really special. So that was a dream. Like I said, dream come true. I grew up on paranormal TV or these documentaries. I mean, as a kid, I watched I think every episode of Sightings. If you recall that.
Oh, nice,
show.
Yeah, dude. I think you can find those on YouTube, maybe.
Yeah. Out on YouTube.
Yeah.
I used to always, as a kid. I hand to God, this is a true story. As a kid, I would ask adults, hey, so in the background of Sightings, there was like the main host, and he would kind of be speaking about whatever mystery was going on, but there would always be people in the background like typing on a computer, and It looked like they were doing some sort of investigative research. And I used to ask adults, like, how do you get that job? What like,
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
and, obviously never got a real answer. So I think that getting the opportunity to do something on TV was kind of like a life fulfillment dream of a young me.
I think so.
Wanting to do that. So yeah, awesome stuff.
So what are your thoughts? Do you think there's actually a champ out there, or, after having gone out and investigated, what do you think? Is something's going on out there?
Oh, I 100% believe their champ is out there. What champ is up to a lot of interpretation. There's some, I definitely came across some weirder stories in regards to champ. One of the funny things that Sandra Mancy, who took kind of the most famous photo, pointed out was that champ moved robotically, and that when it opened its mouth, like an obscene amount of water came gushing out, and before it like died back underwater. And
right.
I've never heard anybody really talk about that description. It's so strange and bizarre. And on Lake Champlain at that time, if you rewind the calendar back about 13 months, on the southernmost point of Lake Champlain, there was the Abear Road incident.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. They seen Bigfoot with glowing red eyes. And,
right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, that was only 13 months before the Mancy photo was taken.
That's wild.
Yeah. And then there's a couple of like nuclear installations along Lake Champlain that had UFO reports flying over them within that 13 months. So there was something weird going on at Lake Champlain, I think.
Dude, I love it.
In that 13 month span. I interview a couple of different eyewitnesses on the show, and on Mysteries Decoded, and this didn't really make it to air, but most of the eyewitnesses that I talked to that had seen Champ multiple times were also having somewhat emotional things going on in their lives, like deaths happening.
Oh,
so just weird stuff. There is a weird book that I read called Lake Monster Traditions that kind of ties the idea of lake monsters sort of being these fairies between the living world and the world of the dead. Yeah. So there's some weird stuff that, I think was a little much for maybe network TV that really wanted to kind of take
this will be for the Mysteries Decoded Patreon, no doubt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where it was like, oh, okay, let's not ask too crazy questions here.
That's awesome that you got that though.
I try, like I
you found that in the book, I guess I should say.
For sure. I 100% wanted to treat Champ flesh and blood, cryptozoological. Let's figure out a way to see if there could actually be a creature here in the lake. But I never wanted to completely close the door on potentially the supernaturally stuff going on too. So after all the stuff that I encountered and all the people I spoke to, there's a story that didn't make it onto the show either that involved like electric fog. Christine, she was the 93-year-old woman I believe I interviewed on the show.
Okay.
She had lived on Lake Champlain her entire life. Wow. Saw Champ, like a mama Champ and a baby Champ, come out of Lake Champlain, but kind of come out of this like electric looking fog that like permeated into her room. And she said she could feel like tingles on her skin. So just like, if you keep hearing these weird stories, it was sort of like, I think something strange is happening when it comes to Lake Champlain and Champ. The eDNA evidence at the end of the show, spoiler alert, doesn't necessarily add up to Champ being in the lake, but also the biologist that I spoke to and the people that did the testing of the eDNA said that in order to completely rule out Champ being in the lake, we would have had to have taken samples from all different parts of the lake. It was just the specific part we took samples from within a general radius of that area, there was no evidence of anything odd or unusual in the lake that they couldn't account for. But that doesn't necessarily deem the whole lake void of champ. And there's a lot of compelling evidence, obviously, hundreds of years of stories and witness sightings. And I think the champ mystery is still very alive and well. But as far as I'm concerned, yes, there is something odd going on in that lake. And I think it takes the form of a lake monster. And,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. I got to ask you, being in California, and I think my audience would be, they'd be like, why aren't you asking him this? Have you ever gotten into any Bigfoot stuff?
So, boy, I had the opportunity to go to the Patterson-Gimlin site with Petikoff.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah.
And Eli Watson and those guys, and I couldn't make it out. I started driving up, and I got a flat tire like halfway up there. Yeah, and it just like the timing then got off, and I couldn't. So that's literally still one of my biggest regrets, because we were gonna get to camp out. I think they made a documentary for Small Town Monsters about the.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, Bigfoot at Bluff Creek. It's probably the one you're referring to. It's one of my favorites of that series. Yeah.
I was going to get to go out there with those guys and I guess be a part of it, but I couldn't make it. I did meet up with them. There's a Bigfoot museum in near like Santa Cruz, Felton. And I met up with them there. We kind of chatted. It was like 4th of July morning. It was really
oh, weird. Yeah. That's I think that's Mike Rugg's old school Bigfoot museum.
Right. Yeah. So I've been to that place. He nice. A bunch of times. He told me a really interesting Bigfoot story where they had found it's a small town outside of kind of where I live. It's in the San Jose area. I believe it's like near Hollister, California.
Mm-hmm.
I think she told me a story where they found a cow with its head completely ripped off.
Whoa.
And
not a clean, is ripped.
I asked that question. Was this like a clean cut? And he didn't have the answer for me. Okay. But apparently there were some tracks spotted with it. And after that, they had what he claimed was kind of like a Men in Black. Men in Black showed up and started asking questions. So it's kind of like
from Petikoff?
No. This was the guy that runs the museum.
Okay, I'm like, if this is Petikoff, I've never heard this. I'm gonna double check before theirs because this story rocks.
This wasn't from Petikoff. No.
Okay, this is the owner of the shop. Okay.
Yeah. So he told me that story. So that's probably the weirdest Bigfoot story I've heard out in California. Even though there's some really weird ones. I think I have a Instagram post about a Bigfoot sighting and then a guy claiming he was possessed later on. This is outside of LA. I have a Bigfoot story where it's the book. It's like a book from the 70s just called Bigfoot, I believe.
Nice.
And there's a story in there where there's a Bigfoot sighting and it kind of culminates in a black-eyed kid encounter that shows up. I'm always on the lookout for the black-eyed kid stuff. They keep popping up in my life randomly, so I don't know what that means. But so I've uncovered some cool Bigfoot stories, but I've yet to do a proper squatching, which I'm dying to do. I'm definitely
you got to. I feel like it's coming someday. It'll come.
It'll come. Yeah. I had the golden opportunity to do it with it.
Close, but everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. Everything happens for a reason. I that one still stings looking back, really, because that's a dream to get to that spot. Is just my God, the PGF I think is the best empirical evidence of any of this stuff that exists. I think.
It's hard to beat the Patterson-Gimlin film, no doubt. Yeah, I feel the same way. Wow, I love these episodes where you get to talk to someone and it's throwing all this crazy stuff in here is such a good Thanksgiving dinner of cryptid and weirdness and like just like John Keelness is so cool. Like I appreciate you coming on, Nick. This has been a super fun chat. Before we go, I want to give you the chance to any closing thoughts that you have. Definitely feel free, and also how people can keep up to date with what you've got going on and anything that you would want to plug.
Sure. Well, first off, thank you so much, Jeremiah, for having me. This has been a blast. Whenever I get to chat about this stuff, it's always just the highlight of the day. Everybody can find me at California Creepypasta on Instagram. That's probably the best place to interact with me or to see what I'm doing most up to date. There's also CaliforniaCreepypasta.com. I do have a Twitter, which is very rarely used, but I'm out there too. But definitely Instagram is the best place. Also, Paranormality Magazine. I write an article once a month. There's always something interesting kind of coming out there. And Mysteries Decoded, the Lake Champlain Monster episode is available on the CW website, the CW app. So definitely please go check that out. That would be awesome. And there's just a lot more to come. As we mentioned, there's a really interesting paranormality documentary project that we are in the very, very, very baby steps of building, but it is going to be something really, really cool. And is going to tie into some of the stuff we talked about tonight. And I'm really excited.
I'm pumped, dude. Oh man, that's going to be so good. Nick, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a super fun chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremiah. Have a good one, man.
You got it. Thank you for listening to Bigfoot Society. If you like the show, please review and rate it 5 stars on iTunes. Hit the share button and send this episode to all your friends on social media. Subscribe to Bigfoot Society wherever you listen to podcasts. It doesn't cost a thing. Pick up a Bigfoot Society shirt or enamel pin over on our Etsy page, and people will tell you all about their Bigfoot sightings when you wear it. At least that's what people tell us. That's what happens. If you'd like to become an official member of Bigfoot Society with a membership card, a community of like-minded individuals, and extra content each month, then please consider becoming a supporter of the podcast by going to www.patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. Thanks for listening.
Progressive presents Adjusting to the Suburbs.
I never really thought about tools until I bought a house in the suburbs. It's like this weird homeowner test if I need a tool for a project and don't have it. And my neighbor Ted loves to give me that look when I ask to borrow a pole saw. A year ago, I didn't even know pole saws existed. And now I gotta borrow one from Ted? What is happening?
Anyway, when you save with Progressive by bundling your home and auto, that's the easy part of adjusting to the suburbs. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company coverage provided in service by affiliates and third-party insurers.